glad I'm very
Hello, everybody.
small.
It's Quentin from Hunters of Light, and today we've got Hilary with us. Going to show us some equestrian excellence. Okay, so enough horsing about. See what I did there, Hilary. It's really cool to have you on the Hunters of Light. I was talking to Roger probably a couple of months ago, not weeks, and he was saying that he went to photograph some horses with you, and he thought he'd got this beautiful shot of the horse jumping, and he was like so excited. And then you said, nah, ears, not like that, feet, not like that. So there's clearly more to it than just, horse run, jump over obstacles. So I'm pretty keen to hear what it is that we're not doing correctly when we do that. So I'm just going to hand over to you. Thank you very much for being part of it with us today.
Wow. Well, thanks, Quentin. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think the horse world is a whole nother genre. I've really loved watching what you have already presented, and all the presenters obviously have presented in this series. And it is really, something I'm going to go back and look at over and over. It really is a treasure, I think, for anyone wanting to do any photography, but also whatever photography they're doing, all these aspects that come from other fields and genres really, really, really help. So thank you for creating it. And
Cool.
yeah, I'm pretty excited to be here.
Is pretty excited to be here code for I'm pooping my pants, because I think that's
well, I like to be behind the camera.
Yeah.
And I always say that photography is the story I fail to put to words, because I'm hopeless at explaining and talking and stringing everything together nice and smoothly. I'm a bit more dotty around me, and I think you might see in the presentation that we'll probably end up going, well, you will see. We're going to probably go on a bit of a tour. And if you can all try and keep up and not get lost along the way, that's kind of my main goal. Yeah,
exactly. Follow the lady with the flag.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you know what? I've got probably too many pictures to show, and I guess it's just because I'm introducing equine photography. I don't know how many people listening have done equine photography. I'm sure that later on people will come back and look at it, and hopefully there would be some parts of it that have made people go, that's interesting enough to go and maybe give it a try.
Absolutely.
I think there's a hell of a lot to it for the different reasons, and we'll go through them a little bit. But I think I'm going to start going and fly through some presentations and talk, so that we don't have to look at me too much. And yeah, and just basically take you on a nice little adventure into my world. And
so
horses.
You could have said, we're going to take a nice canter through. Huh? You throw them in.
We're gonna take a gallop.
That's it. Yeah. So saddle up. Let's go.
It's gonna be a gallop on a young horse with lots to look at.
Yep. So hold on tight. Don't fall off.
Yeah, exactly. So I think let's go. I'm gonna share my screen. Cool. So let's see how this works. And share.
There we go.
And just a second. Play. Okay, how does that look?
Perfect.
Nice. All right, great. So basically an introduction to photography. A little bit about me. I'm from Zimbabwe. I've spent a lot of time in the bush. I don't know if anyone knows who that man is. I am obviously very horsey, and didn't do much photography, but have had amazing opportunities. I came to Joburg on a trip, as we in Zimbabwe do very often, been through phases where we have to come down to Joburg and buy things like butter. But yeah, on one of my trips, I ended up wandering around Bryanston Organic Market, funnily enough, and chatting to a photographer there and doing a a little course with him, which was about 4 hours in total, where we had an introduction to lingo, the photography lingo, all of which we all know where we started. But yeah, ISO and aperture, and I love aberration, and f-stop, and what are all these things. And I think the tea and biscuits are probably what I remember most. But of course there was definitely seeds planted. And yeah, I think the heart of it came to me in an instance when I decided to buy a Canon 7D, and that really beautiful 70 to 200 f2.8 lens, which I just, it was like, wow. And I kind of guessed I would learn along the way what that meant. And so I did quite a lot of wildlife photography. I was in the bush, and I had the chance to see some amazing things. And yeah, so it began, it was, I think, like everyone, I think, with an opportunity, an interest, and a lot of luck, I got to photograph a lot of wildlife. I learned what an f-stop was, depicted here. And yeah, I love the feel of photography. I kind of maybe not conventional or traditional. I like textures and almost the shots that aren't perfect, but with a lot of story in them. And I think that my aim was to tell stories and share those stories, and I loved it when people responded to that. I was very lucky to kind of do photojournalism in the sense that I could also share the awareness of conservation and the abundance and beauty of the world we live in, as well as the vulnerability and the challenges we have. So telling stories, and I was lucky enough to win some awards, and the experience that goes with that is, just a wonderful thing. And I guess, challenging and growing into, just planting seeds for everyone who's listening. If you're already a photographer, I'm sure you've tried this, but, to help just focus and clarify, how do you tell a story? Some of my favorite moments are, early mornings. I just love it when there's been rain and there's not a track on the road, and you've come across tracks and you follow them, and you get a story like this, which I think everyone knows about. I also, the idea of what would the bush at sundown is at Christmas time when it's hot, and this is the kind of feeling and vibe that, like, I think helps to express and paint that story.
That is beautiful, beautiful image. I think this was the one that Roger was telling me about. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, well, I think that when when you're having a gin and tonic and watching this, and the experience of it, I mean, it's a great way to take you to that moment. And if you've been in the bush, it's a place you want to return to, and it's pictures like this that really resonate, I think. So why would you want to photograph horses? That's basically what we're going to go into, is the why, where, and how. So what is it about a horse? And I mean, I think that everyone throughout history knows that they've occupied such a powerful place in our lives, emotional, spiritual, daily lives, for thousands and thousands of years. We've had them. They've changed basically civilization from herding to warfare to transport, and there's so much we relate to in a horse. Even the width of our roads today is a measure from the days when carriages were designed, and we needed 2 horses to fit on the road.
See, what they should have done is they should have done 3 horses, because my Land Rover can't. The old Defenders can't turn in a circle in a road these days. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, exactly. But yeah, I mean, the amount of contribution and you know, that horses, I mean, I was actually driving to one of my first talks and ended up behind a Ferrari and was kind of going, well, what's it about a horse? And, you know, I mean, man has followed and loved and appreciated horses enough that, you know, cars, Mustangs, measure in horsepower. I mean, they really hold a huge part of our history. So, I mean, I love, obviously, the history of horses, and how everything's been developed around horses and our connections with them. So that then takes us into, you know, basically this precision control and photographing them and all the aspects of photographing them, and the sense of how they kind of end up telling a great deal about ourselves and our passions and our desires, and you know, photographing that is a great adventure and quite a good challenge. So you know, I started working with, when I came out of the bush, you know, photographing animals felt very free and easy, and then all of a sudden I had to photograph people and horses and movements and moments and light, and capturing them all in the same time frame, millisecond. And I think that a lot of other genres don't have the same level of pressure. I mean, wildlife, you've got one chance to capture it, and then it's gone. Horses, I could take 2,000 frames and only get one, and we can carry on doing it for as long as we want, and almost that can create almost more pressure sometimes, because you do know that there is a chance of getting the right shot, but there's so many variables to get right at the same millisecond. And I think that's where the challenge of equine photography comes in. And I think it's a great thing, you know, for wildlife photographers and photographers to, you know, learn and control their cameras with the timing, you know, just sharpen up your reactions and things. Yeah,
it looks like a seahorse. That profile of that face it just says seahorse to me. Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, that's an Arab, and there's so many different breeds, and they're all designed for different things, and then we'll touch on it a tiny bit. But I think that knowing your subjects is a huge asset, obviously, again, with all photography. But you know, you do want to be able to anticipate behavior, and you know the major attributes of what you're trying to show, whether it's freedom in wild horses. I think that, you know, your pictures obviously are trying to tell stories, and yeah, I think that you know, the main questions are, you know, why are you taking the images? And that's what happens when you start working with clients, and which happened when I started working in equine photography, is, you know, there's all these different reasons people want shots of their horses. So yeah, anticipating what they're going to do, and I think the point of this chat is, I really kind of started thinking about it a lot, and probably too much, a little bit like this talk. And I think what helped me and what changed everything is when I learned how to relax a little bit, and you know, let the images just fall into line. You know, I think that, you know, once you've got this pre-visualization, you know, I think there's a great it's great to have a concept of what you're trying to capture, an idea of how it will look, and then there's a good chance that none of that will happen.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I think, you know, you've got to plant the seed, and then I really believe, you know, have the vision or the feeling. But when you arrive there, forget all of that and just let what comes to you come. And later on, obviously, it's important to know how your camera works. But before we get to that, it's just a case of emptying your brain, and letting the story unfold in front of you. So I think maybe a way which I quite like using to explain that thought process and not overthinking it too much is about a few years ago, I stepped back 3,000 or 4,000 years into history, and it was just a hobby that I took up, and that was looking at Egyptology, which I really recommend. It's a wonderful place. I'm talking about the history of it, not necessarily actually being in Egypt, but it is a wonderful place that's far, far away. And it's a really amazing adventure. Ancient Egypt is arguably one of the most advanced civilizations, of the world. And there's so many firsts there that we're all familiar with. Moses, Cleopatra, pyramids, etc. But the relevance of this story and about clearing our mind is it's a cold fact that when creating mummies, they would scoop out your brain through your nose and throw it away. I think Roger's going to enjoy this because I know he enjoys Egyptology. Now you're keeping up. We're talking about horses or Egyptology. But they would throw the brain away, and they would keep the other organs with the mummy, but they left the heart in place. And I love this part of the story because it was just basically that they believed that we did all our thinking with our heart, and it was the only organ that really responds to emotion. And although that has absolutely no relevance to my career and my and what I'm doing, I just felt that it was a great. As I arrived, I kind of went, okay, turn off the brain and really enjoy the feel of what you're doing. And I have always found that when you can do that successfully, you feel it, and that's when your best images come.
I think it's a fantastic, tip or whatever to follow, because a lot of times you'll get somewhere and you'll think, oh, but the sun's from the wrong side, or there's too much light, or there's not enough light, or etc. And you actually by being worked up and thinking about those things, you do miss the story, and just going with it and finding the images. I think it's a very good tip. That.
Yeah, visualization, as I said, and I kind of like sometimes, especially when I was starting out, just had to arrive there and kind of go, it's probably not going to, or at least accept that it's not going to go to flow, and to let your brain switch off. And I mean, for example, shooting horses, you're really aren't in a lot of control often. You are responding to situations. And I think that there's a beautiful reward, for walking inwards from a frame. And, that's not just what you're looking at it. It's, it's how it's feeling. So, this example of just the light and, these ponies were actually running towards me, and that was what I wanted to get in the shot. And they ran past me, and, I just love the light and the story of how that flows.
Absolutely, and that dust and the light in the grass is amazing.
Yeah, well, you sometimes you have to wait, and it's just that case of waiting for the moment and the light, and I mean, we also, every day it changes, and that's one thing the bush teaches you, and then of course, your sense, you really want to catch a person coming out. There's a sense of emotion and connection. You want to feel a character in a shot, And I love, the art of a shot, and not always traditionally correct. And I mean, here you can't even see the girl. But I think that my favorite moments, and I think a lot of my clients really resonate with, how completely different these moments are with different people. But the art and simplicity and resonating with those shots. So, I really have had some unique moments, and yeah, I really owe a lot to the horse. So how it gets broken down, there's 3 basics. And, that is, what is the images going to be used for? And I mean, I think these, this helps very much when you're taking them. You've got to learn and understand horse language, and that's horses and the people who own them. that's another language, the whole thing. So that's a process, and and then how your camera works, and controlling the light, the speed of what's happening, the stories, just this picture, for example, there's 3 people, and it's a candid in between moment, which are sometimes the best. But getting everyone to do the right thing at the right time, and catching that is where the real art comes in. So what the images are going to be used for, I do a lot of work with stud farms and breeding, and so that's, you're always trying to capture versions of horses. There's a lot of preparation that goes into getting horses ready for a shoot. There are quite a few challenges involved. They're terrible at standing still. They have a lot of their own character. They're playful, naughty, can be dangerous. And you can spend a lot of time just trying to ultimately show, this horse's presence, his art, of heart. I mean, a sense of connection.
It's a beautiful shot. I love the sort of lane of trees and the lights on that. Lovely. Very, very cool.
Yeah. So, when you're trying to, so this is a stallion, and stallions I find particularly tricky to capture because they have so much presence, and you don't want them to look ordinary. Confirmation shots for breeding, that's a horsey word, and it's, it's basically the shape and structure of a horse, and the different breeds have different aspects that they want to show, but just with the horse looking to the left slightly, it adjusts how long their back looks. If they're standing leaning forward, like this picture shows, where the horse is just slightly leaning forward because he might be looking at the bowl of cubes, or we often use feather dusters. So he's interested in that. You're wanting to line up certain parts of him so that he looks square and straight, and so there's quite a lot that goes into that, which anyone who's interested in horse photography would go into more. But on a lighter note, you do end up wanting to have all their feet on the floor when you're taking professional shots, and they're not always complying. There's a lot of personality. I think that's not an
official pose, is it?
Yeah, and I mean it's not a very appropriate pose. This is also a young stallion at a show, and there were quite a few other stallions around, and he was very excited, and he had so much character. It's just wonderful to watch, and probably not a very appropriate view of him, but it definitely is eye-catching, and I kind of think that these stories show and connect, and have, as far as a breeder is concerned, a role to play in marketing, what they're producing. Obviously, there's many candid moments, but so getting that perfect shot we saw a little while ago can often be a lot more challenging than it looks. millimeters make huge amounts of difference, really. And if you're trying to show a horse's jumping style, this is, I've manipulated a little bit. There was a jump and it wasn't jumping obviously that high, but yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful expressive shot of a very tidy jump. You know, there's different aspects to the different disciplines or sports. And so, you know, there is quite a lot of knowledge knowing, you know, what the breeder wants to show and not show when they're producing horses.
And
Obviously racing.
different breeders have different requirements, or is it, or are you saying that the set of requirements is fairly generic across the different breeds?
I think it's very individual, but there's different breeds for different sports, and you know, those are all have, you know, a jumping horse is designed to jump high over a jump. A racing horse is designed to go fast and flat. You know, a dressage horse is designed to show you elevation and expression and lightness and balance. You know, there's a perfect example of a dressage horse that's just, you know, I mean, I think if you don't know horses, you can still appreciate that there is a lightness and a connection and you know, a story between the rider and the horse going on there. I mean, if you look at their ears, you can see there's an intense concentration. So, you know, as a photographer, you're wanting to capture those moments. And yeah, the different you know, these are quite normal sports in Joburg, Kailami area, but you know, there's a lot more equitation sports around. So the main sports that I focus on would be show jumping, and you know, there are a lot of shows, and I mean, later on, you know, briefly, you know, the why, how, and where. There are shows, probably 2 or more, nearly every week normally in Johannesburg. So, you know, anyone who wants to go and try their hand at horse photography, and there's always a lot going on. But yeah, I mean, you know, there's different things you're trying to portray if you're selling images to riders and breeders. And, you know, this is just a few examples of you know, I quite like different angles. You know, there are challenges. Ultimately, you're wanting to show off how a horse's style and jump and height of jump is. But yeah, there's a lot of stories that come out in the rain, into the sun, with dressage. You know, you're wanting an uphill appearance, beautiful symmetry, balance. You know, they're real athletes. I think dressage horses have a huge amount of pressure, although it all just looks perfectly calm and controlled. There's such a conversation going on, you know, that, and you want to express that.
I like that pose. It's really nice. Love it.
Yeah, so this is, you know, I mean, obviously, you know, lenses and the equipment you use, you know, help tell those stories. And, you know, I mean, it's just boils down to every single scenario. You know, you've got colors and light, and you've got no control and competitions of where the movement is happening, where the light is, what the time of day is. And so, you know, it is thinking on your feet and, you know, finding the criteria of what they want with the aesthetics of a beautiful image.
So here's a question. If you want to do and I'm not sure what it would be in horsey parlance, but a beauty shot of a horse, and you wanted to use studio flashes, etc. What is the protocol with that? You know, is it the done thing, not the done thing? You know, just you know, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I mean, when you talk about a beauty shot, we're going to, I'm going to move into some portraiture in a moment. But a beauty shot, for example, as a confirmation shot, or a horse jumping. I mean, I think what you mean by a beauty shot is getting the shot, or are you referring to more of a person and a horse?
I suppose, and I'm trying to think of the photographer who I saw work with this, but it's basically, I suppose, let's take it from a portrait point of view of a person. You know, you have a key light, a light to separate, you know, the subject from the background. You know, that sort of, I suppose, dramatic lit type shot, as opposed to, you know, the shot for the breeder, you know, the breeding, etc. I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself well there.
Yeah. No, I think I've got you. I think, give me 1 second and we're going to get to that. I just, this was just an eventing shot, and, you know, I mean, that's all action. And, you know, polo and, you know, there's all these different sports to basically go and capture. Just anyone going to any of these events, I think, you know, you just need to really understand that horses are prey animals. The amount of photographs I have with the horse's eye looking right at me, they know about cameras, they really know that they have a sense of something watching them. And, you know, you obviously do not want to be interfering with anyone competing. You know, there's a serious, you know, etiquette and respect to horses and the riders. So yes, I'm going to get to your question now. But yeah, competition and sports photography with horses is about emotions, you know, capturing those. You know, everyone, you know, there's thousands of shots, but, you know, just 1 or 2 of them will speak to you. Catching horses, jumping at the right time, and the in-between moments. And, you know, that leads on to the art of photography, basically. I never use artificial lighting. I do use reflectors a little bit. I'm just going to go through some of these images and you'll see that, you know, just the resonance between rider and horse and the connections, and, you know, going into the art of just close-ups, moments that sort of tell a story. Here's your part, the light. So this is backlit by the sun. Obviously, horses in competition, I mean, you couldn't put up any lights anyway. I think they do, a lot of them will respond to lights going off and flashing. You know, there's a lot going on at a show. Yeah, I mean, horses are prey animals, so their senses are their eyes, and they're responding to things, obviously noise and visual. But I think that that's where, you know, again, equestrian photography is so much more of a challenge, because to get that moment, you know, you've got to be looking for it, and you've got to be kind of hunting for it to find them. And I think the more practice you have, the more, you know, you kind of know, if you set up here, you've got this light, and, you know, obviously the light is a massive part to how a picture comes across. You know, I mean, this is a racehorse. It's early morning light, but there's just such regal tones to it, you know, and it's just a random picture, but I think that it explains that. So yeah, I think that that's something that becomes practice improves. But yeah, here now I think in your beauty shots or your more stylized shots, I still don't use lights. I think that there are, you know, a lot of, I'm not sure of how many equine photographers do like a studio kind of effect. And I think that you probably could and get some amazing stuff, but you do end up taking a lot of frames. not necessarily, you can, I do feel like I end up waiting for a moment. I don't take a massive amount of photographs, but when you've got that moment, you need to be able to take whatever it is, 20 shots. And I don't think lights, the horse is always moving. There's always directional changes. It's not it's not the sort of thing you can set up and say, everyone stay there. Now, that right ear, I'd like to move it forward a little bit.
Well, that's why you take 20 shots, so you can have the ear and then comp it later. I just want to, I don't know if you can see what I'm going to do now, but I'm just going to share my desktop. Why is it not going to do it?
Very little.
I wanted to see, it's not going to work. I wanted to, now I've got to get myself back. That's always the problem. Hey, I'm sure I'll edit that out later. What I wanted to do was show a picture that I found of a horse. In fact, let me see if I can do it, because otherwise it's just going to be.
Okay, well, you
Photoshop. There we go. I've got it. There we go.
Oh, you've got it.
Yeah. Can you see that? I know it's probably really small in the background, but
yeah. So it looks like it's jumping into a light, basically. Am I right?
Yeah. So it looks like there's two. So one on the left, one on the right. And I suppose what I meant earlier by the sort of studio lighting, etc. I know that. When it's a more of a lifestyle type shot or portraits as like the one you've got on at the moment, that it does become very difficult to control things. But I suppose for me the by bringing in that dramatic lighting just shows off the power of the animal itself, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, well, I think that I mean, you definitely, the light highlights. I mean, obviously light takes your eye straight to that, to what you're wanting to highlight. And I think that is, with horses, definitely, a wonderful, wonderful thing to be able to do that. I think, I guess I do more photography for people and the sport and the breed, as opposed to the art of photography. So I think, obviously with wild horses and all that, you have, you've got a lot of art that comes into it that you would almost, that's not so personal or particular to a certain need, but just, as a beautiful picture to look at. I mean, like I was looking at some of those ocean pictures of those waves on one of the presentations before, and I mean, how beautiful they were.
Hey?
I probably a little bit, maybe I need to get the whip out and actually learn a bit more with lights and set them up. At the moment, when you've got a horse and a person and not necessarily a model, and you're trying to get a whole, sorry about the background noises, but you're trying to get a whole story to come together, and you've got an hour or two basically, and the idea of moving lights and having that aspect is just too much at the moment. I think if you've got more time to practice with a horse and the horse to get used to it, and I mean, you've got to remember that image you showed me. A lot of the people I photograph for, want the horse to have the right shape over the jump,
yes,
as their breeders for that. And, you can jump it maybe 3 or 4 times, and, each shape will be different, and getting the timing and your light. And I think, if you're shopping, just different horses for different courses, basically. But yeah, I mean, I basically end up, working with natural light and kind of moving my subjects around my natural light, as opposed to adding in another element. At the moment, that's enough balls in my hand to juggle. But yeah, I mean, I would like to learn more.
I think we should play.
I think
we need to find a photographer, and then we need to organize some lights. We can do that.
I think we need to bring fashion to the stables.
Yeah.
And get some really wow stuff.
Yeah.
Like bring some, it would be wonderful for you to come and have a go. And I think, as Roger found out also, that there is a lot going on when you've got a horse around. They're pretty big.
Absolutely.
And they rarely do what you want them to do. They're a bit like children, maybe. But yeah, so I mean, there is so much natural light that you can still work with and play with. And I mean, obviously here, shooting with a lot of light, and I mean, I love obviously your editing shows the light too. But yeah, I mean, it just the art of it. I've gone a bit lost now after that, but yeah.
Yeah, that's entirely my fault.
No, I love that. I do love it. But yeah, I mean, it's just connecting things. Some of the challenges, and we'll get into it. And maybe this is a good example. And the last one of the girl with the horse, this in particular, there is exposures and shooting horses with big white faces, but that are also dark.
Yep.
It's a real challenge to get those pink noses to keep the detail, in both, without lights, without flash, and without artificial light.
It's so interesting how, with all these presentations, there are a couple of golden threads that go throughout them. It doesn't matter what the genre is or anything like that. What you were saying now about the light and the dark being right next to each other. It's the curse of the wedding photographer, where
yes.
the white dress and the black suit. If the bride is Scottish and the groom is West African, there's always those where you need to somewhere you need to average it out or decide that you're going to lose one of them. And it's amazing how that's one of the threads that goes through all photography. It's actually so cool how you see it everywhere. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. And no one you're photographing, no one who isn't a photographer understands it. They see with their eyes. But yeah, these are just a few more shots on basically just capturing stories. Wherever your heart is, that's where you'll find your treasure. And people have such strong connections with their horses, and I've always loved that quote. If you think photography is expensive, wait until it's all you've got. The horses.
I thought you were going to say wait until you buy a horse.
Wait until you buy a horse. I think that the value of photography after you've bought the horse, and I think
absolutely.
No, it's a moment that really will last forever.
Very true. And the pity is that a lot of people are digital has kind of wrecked it a little bit for those long-term memories. Because if you don't back it up, you may find that your laptop gets dropped, stolen, whatever, and all of those memories are gone. Whereas, if you were printing them, they certainly are more tangible and more visible. And I think that's something that a lot more photographers should be doing, and that's doing more printing and insisting that people have prints as opposed to just the digital copies.
Yeah, well, for sure. And it's like something that I'm really, really pushed quite a bit. And that is to have a print and to kind of have a collection of prints that you have on the wall or whatever. It's amazing how many times you look at, these moments and how they resonate. I mean, this is just one I absolutely love. This was a rescue donkey.
Fantastic.
And when you put together, it's almost the candid in between moment that for me tells so much stories. But there's a lot that goes into getting this shot. You know, you originally, I think there was 6 or 7 horses, and I've got a few shots with all of these horses and dogs running across the line, and you finally get the right picture and someone's eyes are closed. And I mean, yeah, the more you add to the element, the harder it gets.
Definitely.
But storytelling, you know. So just a little bit, I don't know how we are for time, but just a little bit on cameras. And I guess, you know, photographers watching this, you know, I think it is such a great field to really get to know your camera and practice, you know, especially for wildlife, especially for birds, especially for anything that's moving fast, and storytelling as well. Because, you know, you don't have time to set these things up, and you know, and you can't control really what's being presented, but you do have a lot of expectation, well, especially if you're selling to a client, but, you know, for yourself, of what you would like to get. And I think that, you know, if you came and gave it a try, you would see that there are a lot of distractions and things going on. So cameras, you know, I shoot Canon, so all my lingo is going to be Canon based. But yeah, I shoot 90% of my photography in aperture priority, and my apertures, I love to shoot shallow, obviously, but you know, when you're focusing on and timing of, you know, getting the right things. Especially on ridden horses, you've got the horse's head, and, you know, a meter or so behind it, you've got the rider, and, you know, you and wherever you may be at the moment, you know, you might have a jump or an obstacle or a horse very close to you, or you might be a minute later taking it that's 100 meters away. And so, you know, you've got all those variations that are kind of changing quite quickly. So you don't want to get a whole lot of beautiful shots, but all the wrong things in focus. And so that's the trouble with shooting aperture priority, but or the beauty of it, but shooting shallow, you know, you have to be very, very careful. You know, I love, you know, for example, you know, if the horse is not, I mean, this is a horse jumping quite a big jump, but the moment is, you know, between the rider and the horse, and, you know, the concentration there that I'm trying to depict, and, you know, the different style of it. The speed is obviously very crucial as well, because everything's moving pretty quickly. I try to aim between, you know, 1500th of a second to 2000th of a second, kind of around then. You know, these are all variables, but and, you know, with these days with ISO, you've got so much more, you know, I'm not at all worried about ISO. Back in the day, I definitely noticed it and struggled with it, but I shoot with 5D Mark IV. Most of the time I still shoot a lot. In fact, this shot here with my 7D, my original 7D,
the Mark I,
a Mark I. Yeah, it's still, if I've got a lot of light, that's where I notice my ISO is a big problem. But if I've got a lot of light, there's a feeling that comes out of that camera that I absolutely love. And you know, I think that, you know, that really, you know, lens choice is huge. But there's this real tuning that I've learned that I never knew existed. You know, like a musical instrument that, you know, you put your lens onto. When I put some of my lenses onto my 5D, there's a whole total different story came out of them. And, you know, having to work out and tune them, you know, is quite a fun thing to do, and get to know and feel and really investigate how they work. You know, I love to try and, you know, where you place yourself, and, you know, where the next jump is, and you know, positioning, and, you know, trying to get a shot of the rider and an expression. I love backlight, which a lot of, you know, people don't go. Most people wouldn't be shooting where I was standing. I kind of do often go to a show and sort of just go, oh, okay, well, I'll be here, and sort of make it work, and see what comes out of it. Here's your example of some lighting, and I think that this is an indoor arena that's got skylights, and it's kind of the closest I get to controlling my light. I guess with a constant light, you could also recreate these kind of things very successfully. I just haven't had the chance to. But I mean, here you see the light. The trick here, though, is to capture the horse at the moment where he's uphill. This is a dressage horse. The instructor was out from Germany, and he's kind of like talking about how the lightness of the horse and lifting the horse and the conversation going on. It's like a whole moment here that you know, is quite a special capture, and to then get it in that little thin ray of light.
Yeah, that's the trick. Ears,
that's the
feet,
trick.
legs, rider, and the shaft of light.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you know, your lens selections, I love shooting with the 300 or 400. You obviously don't have much space with a 400, you know, in big shows, and there's a lot of people walking in front of you or across or whatever it is. But this was in harsh, full sun, midday light. But, you know, with your lens selection, you can get some beautiful colors. I think setting up your camera, you know, I shoot AI focus a lot with most of my competition stuff. I think that traditionally, or a lot of wildlife photographers would use servo. You know, the tracking sensitivity of your camera and getting to know that is vitally important. You know, and you know, there's finer tuning and controls which I've kind of really had to master and play with. You know, the sensitivity of how your camera is focusing, and you know, with shows and horses competing, there's a lot of distractions. You know, and you're shooting a white horse, and the next horse over here will be a black horse, and you know, the backgrounds and how they affect what your camera is going to focus on, and just all that tuning makes it, you know, quite a thing to. The deeper you get into it, the more there is to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you know, as you were saying earlier, the more that you know and understand your camera, the better the results will be, because you'll move quicker. You know, you'll react quicker because you're not thinking about, well, hold on, where, what, etc. You know, and also if you know, you look at something on the back of the LCD screen, and if you know your camera, you know that it's either will be fine, that you can, you know, rescue it later if it's a bit on the edge, or not, and adjust accordingly. And I think that it's something that, you know, knowing your camera and knowing what it produces is very, very important.
Yeah, I mean, practice, you know, shooting against busy backgrounds. Composition, I think I need to speed up a little bit, but yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, the art of composition, I mean, that's just what I just love, you know,
cool.
You know, this is mainly brick wall, but, you know, it's just it's a millimeter in the right place, you know, of catching this eye and this horse and expression. You know, I love the fact that this, you know, the mom is cut out of the shot. This is a baby, but her tail, you know, it's a moment that you just capture. You know, where the light is in the horse's expression. I've kind of cut this one a little bit, but I mean, my whole focus is on that little nose, you know, and the story and how that makes you feel. You know, leading lines, obviously, you know, composition, I think, is probably the greatest part of photography once you've got all the basics. And you forget about all the basics, but once you've got them, then you can start playing with composition, and then, you know, the light of it. Obviously, there's a lot of shots that don't work, even though there's beautiful colors and light. And, you know, there's things you don't want to always portray. You know, sometimes tightness in a horse's mouth, and but basically, you know, those are all little things that you would get to know. And, you know, I'm happy to, you know, spend time with anyone who's interested in those things. And it's just basic, you know, that's the horse language that you've got to learn.
This picture here is calling for a bit of flash on that horse to pull it out of the background. It's crying for it. That's we need to do that. We need to go and, you know, let's go to a field. Let's get a sunset with some clouds. you know, because we can arrange that. And then we just put a little of light on that horse and it'll just be awesome. Anyway,
exactly. No, exactly. And I hope conversations like this, I hope that people will connect, and I would love to do some stuff with some other, I mean, I love like-minded people and, you know, making things better and learning from each other. I'll bring you horses and beautiful sunsets.
Oh, there we go. I'll
bring the
light. Yeah, I'll bring the light.
Yeah, bring the light. I love it. I love Annie Leibovitz, you know, and, you know, I think portraiture was probably one of the hardest things I got into. You know, I just, you know, I think that making people put down their, making people be really authentic is important for me. And, you know, there's this whole world of how you look and how you think you look. And, you know, I just, the mastering how you manage people with their horses. I love the fact that the horse is a great distraction. So, you know, you can almost get in between moments. But yeah, there is definitely an art in, and I think obviously there's a lot to learn from fashion photographers or from wedding photographers, you know, on posing people and distracting them enough that they kind of bring themselves, but also making sure that they're not looking bad. Because no one really wants to see themselves looking too bad. Horses are good smilers. You know, all these moments that...
Yeah, still love this one. Love the light,
yeah,
love the colors, everything is just beautiful.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, if that, you know, the stories are, everyone brings them, you know, this is their beautiful home, and this little girl and her pony, you know, they, you know, it's responding to what gets brought to you, and then managing how everyone gets into the right position, which is, it's a beautiful balance. But yeah, I mean, these are just you know, some moments that really resonate with me.
Lovely.
So where, you know, there's obviously horse shows and places you can go, there's breeders, then there's this wonderful world of wild horses, which, you know, I think is an adventure that I'm quite keen to take up. You know, there's the Namibian desert horses in the Namib, there's, you know, American Mustangs, there's Australian Brumbies, France has the Camage horses, Mongolia and the hunting of the eagles and the horses and the whole, you know, there's so many wonderful stories that you can capture horses. So if you want some help finding some places in and around Joburg or any ideas, you know, please, anyone feel free to contact me. Yeah, basically, you know, your level of imagination is really your only limit. Yeah, I think, you know, at the end of this, so, you know, why do we do it? I think it's the same answer. You know, the answer to that question is the same for everyone, you know, whether you're a technical photographer, which I'm not that technical, or an artistic photographer, whether you're conceptual, underwater, aviation, wildlife, all these wonderful stories that you've got in your presentations. I think that, you know, basically we're all photographing and sharing because we love that feeling you get, you know, that feeling you get, you know, when you put your hand on your heart and you feel it responding to the image that you've caught. You know, it's just a wonderful feeling. As per what the Egyptians had to say. You don't need your brain because all your thinking is done with your heart, because it's what responds.
I love that.
And that's the beautiful power of art, you know. And you know, when I watched your presentations with other people, you can really feel it with their images. And yeah, basically in a nutshell, you know, my goals are, you know, to keep finding new wonderful photography words. You know, now I know what an f-stop is. shoot what you love and what you feel. And yeah, that's basically it. If you want to, that's it. But yeah, find some new photography words. The Bolivian salt flats are on my list. What's it, Salad de Uni or something like that. I don't know if
That's
you've heard of him.
the one that they're doing the race, the Dakar through at the moment.
Are they?
I think so.
Wow. In Bolivia, they're just this amazing. I mean, it's
it's massive salt flats, and when if it rains, then it just becomes this complete mess, but looks beautiful.
Well, I don't know if messes. I mean, it becomes like the world's biggest mirror.
Yeah. No, but if they're driving a car through.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. And photography was, I mean, I think the other big one at the moment that is huge is mirrorless.
Mm-hmm. Hilary, is that your last image? I just want to put us next to each other here. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Not that. Click there. Okay, there we go. Yeah, mirrorless, huh? I was just going to say early on when you were talking about, can you see me there, or you?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just going to say early on when you were talking about, the tracking of the horse's eye versus the rider's eye, et cetera, et cetera. I think Roger's going to need to lend you that new camera that's going to be launched early in July. You can select whether you want the animal's eye or the human's eye, and it will track that very accurately. But yeah, I think mirrorless is definitely going to open up a whole new set of worlds, especially the way that the autofocusing side is working. I mean, this is not really a camera, technical whatever, but yeah.
Well, I do think it's an ultimate challenge. I mean, a horse in an arena, you're going past, the wings that hold up, the poles. And I mean, if I've really spent a lot of time tuning that, because, the horse comes past you, you're photographing a horse over there, but another one's walking in front of you. There is so many, the beginning where you're going to see how important it is to tune your equipment. And I mean, the way I've done it is I've learned to do it because I needed to, whereas a technical photographer probably would work it all out and then go out there and try it. I've kind of learned from mistakes and things.
The seat of your pants. It's the best tutor in the world.
Yeah, words don't teach.
No. Get out there and do this, and do it until it gets till it works. Yeah,
I like to have 10 minutes of eye contact with my left eye. But yeah, I think it's a great adventure, equine photography. There's a lot to it. It's interesting enough. It's very dynamic, and it's very beautiful.
Absolutely.
Is there anything more beautiful than a horse?
Well, I don't know. I think the landscape photographers will go on about landscapes, the car, you know what I mean? Is there anything more beautiful than the subject you're shooting?
Than a Ferrari.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I've got a question. You mentioned obviously that there's a lot of events, etc. And I know just up the road from me and obviously from you is the sort of Kalami Agricultural Holdings, and they have that Nissan event there every now and then. So can anyone just rock up and shoot, or do you need to, is there any sort of protocol? I mean, I know if obviously, you pay to get in if that's the case, but then there's no real hindrance. So you can go and shoot fairly freely, I would assume.
Listen, they're public. You can. I definitely, I mean, horses are very sensitive and skittish. You really don't want to be, affecting anyone's performance in any way. So that is a huge amount of respect, I don't want to say, right.
Don't shout when they're coming past saying, oh, look at me. That's not protocol.
I think almost better if you're shouting and waving around. It's that actually being very still in a very predatory pose, waiting for it to come past. It's almost like I often wear white, and I'm often like very visible, and I'm kind of make sure that they know where I am and stuff. But if there's a horse doing a show jumping course, whatever, it's not going to see you, and the next thing you jump up next to a jump. So yeah, I mean, in general, I think you can come and shoot at these events. I think it's respectfully maybe observe some of the other photographers that
Absolutely.
are there that probably know horses a bit better, or know them better. And I think also get chatting to them, so that you can get some guidelines from them. And obviously would welcome anyone to contact me and talk to me, and I'm happy to share any advice, or there's different shows and different events and breed shows, and there's so much going on, actually, and there's so much to photograph there.
Well, what I was going to say is, do you and I know I've asked all the other presenters the same question. I mean, do you do workshops? Do you have like a mentorship for people that wanting to become equine photographers, or are you just there to share the love?
Yeah, well, no, I definitely I've had quite a few people ask me about mentorships and about doing workshops, and I think that I've just been wanting to refine a product and put something together, and all the variations of that, and I'm a little bit finalize something and then go, no, we want to be completely different, let's start again. And I've just been very, very busy, and luckily the last few years that I kind of haven't had time to do that. Busy and a little bit lazy maybe, but it's definitely the next step, and I would love to put something together, and especially on your forum as well, because I do think that there are a lot of tips and tricks to photographing horses.
Absolutely.
There's a huge amount of experience. What I've learned, it would be nice to learn it a bit quicker, so that you can get on with.
Even if it's a case of let's not irritate the show organizers. Here are some things that you need to do before you step out onto the onto the sand in the center.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
This looks like a good spot.
Yeah, hold on. Oh, there's a horse coming. Could you just wait? But
you'll be told very quickly what you're doing wrong in the horse world. Don't worry.
Absolutely. But I think if and when you finalize your mentorship / training, etc. I'd really like you to send it through so that I can put it on the website, because I think it's definitely a way of me being able to give back to you and all the other presenters, by putting that up for you, so you can at least try and get a little bit of, whether it's revenue or work or whatever, through that. Yeah. So please feel free to do that. Of course, I'm pretty sure Roger and Luke will be game for the test workshop. I'll join them.
That's excellent.
We'll put you through your paces, and then you'll have to, by that you'll know the type of people to avoid, and you'll pick that up in the filtering process. No, I'm just
but you guys are the crash test dummies.
Exactly. But other than that, the comments on the group have been really, really cool. If you've got time, just jump on there and answer some questions. Most of them we've kind of covered. So it's more a case of just saying thank you to all the awesome comments that you've been getting. So it's actually really cool. I'm glad we had you on, because I think it's been a fantastic topic. People have loved the images and your stories and your zigzagging from one thing to the next. And I think
you all stay on. Did you all stay on?
Absolutely. It looks like the numbers are pretty consistent. So it's awesome. Thank you very, very much for agreeing to come on. I'm glad I managed to convince you. It was a journey. So very cool. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No, it's been wonderful. Thank you. And I appreciate everything you're doing. Look forward to more.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
All right. You too. Okay. Thanks, Quentin.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.